And the new mayor joins us this week. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
As
Good
always.
to see you again.
You probably feel at home here in this studio. You were one of our regular panelists for several years on our monthly program that focused on Canadian relations and business. And we should also mention that you now sit on our board here at Mountain Lake PBS.
That's right.
It's been a kind of whirlwind first few weeks for you. You just get sworn in and you have to sit down and chair one of your first city council meetings, and you were really under the gun getting a budget passed. You only had a few days.
That's right. The previous mayor, produces a budget on October 8th, and the city council works on that up until as late as January 15th or 14th when it's required to be passed. I'd really like to see that process be a little bit more front-end loaded, a lot more work done earlier, because as of January 1, really there are a lot of cuts still to be made, and they trimmed a budget down that could have been a 28% tax increase based on the original numbers on October 8th, and some of the things that Chamberlain was required to put into something that was more manageable at 5.9% by the time we got it in under the wire, but still a tax increase, and still in combination with the county's actual slight tax decrease will result in a tax increase of about $67 for a typical household in this upcoming year. So we need to just do a process that is a little bit more thoughtful earlier on and see if we can get these things under the tax cap.
That's tough on a mayor to come in and have to be under the gun like that to pass a budget. Any thought through the years of moving it so that a new administration doesn't come in and face such a tight budget deadline?
I've said publicly that I think our goal should always pass it by December 31st. But I'm also really starting to begin the next budget process right now and start getting processes into place where we do these things in a 5-year long-term planning perspective, and have the budgets from the individual departments coming in a lot earlier again, and with a 5-year perspective. And so I think if we can put some better processes in place, I think it will be much more efficient next time around. About
a 6% tax increase, though. That for some is still a sizable tax increase.
It is, especially those on fixed income. Their income isn't rising at nearly that rate. Sometimes they're lucky to have it rise at the rate of inflation. So to have an increase in a pretty significant component of their annual budget is very difficult for them.
So as you get into your first few months now, what are some of the priorities for you?
Well, I mentioned long-term budgeting, but budgets aren't done in isolation. Really, the budget on October 8th should be the statement of how we're going to operationalize something else over the next year to 5 years. That something else is a really complete strategic plan that says what are our priorities, what are the things we want to invest in, what are the things that are really core, and then there may be other things we do that aren't quite so core or central, and we might do those as time or resources or money permits. But what are our core functions? What do we want to do well? Where do we see ourselves in 5 years, or better yet, 15 or 20 years? And then what do we need to do now with regard to the budget?
The city, of course, has been awarded a $10 million downtown revitalization grant from New York State. And early on, when the process was starting, a lot of people were looking at Durkee Street and a plan that had been talked about for a number of years there, putting in a commercial and residential building there, maybe parking there, a greenway. But over the past several months, committees have come together and a lot of other ideas have come up. Where does that stand right now?
There's still a lot of merit to that Durkee Street idea. First big challenge with it is we have to do something with all those cars. And if we are to build another parking facility somewhere in the downtown core, which we're required to stay within this footprint as a part of the grant, it probably wouldn't be in Durkee Street. That's kind of at the corner of the downtown core rather than more central location. So we have a little bit of a problem figuring out what we're going to do with that parking. But let's assume, and we have got a study that we've received a grant for, separate from the DRI process, to study parking downtown. We're starting that almost immediately. So if we could be freed with the parking constraint in that area, I think that Durkee Street, let's call it Durkee Park for want of a better word, is still something that could be very central. The other thing that's coming out of this DRI is people want access to the waterfront or lakefront, riverfront. And the Saranac River Trail has a phase that we'll be completing soon. And they also want connectivity. They want flow. They want it to have this kind of pedestrian feel to it, this visitor-friendly feel to it. And I've been floating around the idea of what if we really think of our goal with DRI is to connect people better to the assets that are already there, including maybe a Durkee Park someday, according to that original concept you alluded to. So what are our assets? Well, we have the Strand, cross into that Durkee Park, and maybe go down to the river, walk along the river. You can walk along the river across Bridge Street, which is also going to be streetscaped and a little bit more pedestrian friendly, all the way to Memorial Park. Heck, you can keep going even farther and go to the Champlain Monument, and then come back along City Hall Place, which is streetscaped, and then back to the Strand. Now people really have a reason to start circulating all around that downtown core. Take a little offshoot down to the Marina over the footbridge, et cetera, or down Bridge Street, all the way down to Dock Street. So now you're really getting people to move around and connect. Tons of greenery, a little bit more of a pedestrian feel all the way. And if we could do that, and I think it's within our grasp to do that, now all of a sudden this is kind of world class. A lot of those elements are already there, it's just we don't ever connect them. So we need to figure out a way to get people to flow around the downtown by a sculpture, a mural, a historic sign every 50 or 100 feet. So there's always a reason to go a little bit further and travel our city. So I think that's the direction I see this DRI going. I think it's becoming quite visionary. It's not just kind of build some monolith downtown and they will come, because as you know, we've done that before and usually doesn't work out all that well. It's really about building an environment that is so visitor friendly and resident friendly that actually then the shop owners and the developers will want to come. We don't need to build it for them. They're going to want to be part of it because we've created something they couldn't have created on their own.
And from the get-go, it's one of the components has been that you would look for private money to come in, that the $10 million would be the seed money to start the whole process. Right. Is part of that private money is the hope that there could still be a hotel in that area, in that lot behind the train station? Mm-hmm. As one of the signature pieces of this?
We've been speaking with developers, some that will actually come here and visit with us, others that we have video conferences with, and they tell us the kinds of things we could reasonably expect. In one of the properties they actually are excited about is that former hotel location that you discussed, maybe as a convention center as well, maybe even as a relatively higher income senior citizens who want to live in that kind of urban environment. And they want to look out their window and see a lot of people milling around and stuff happening and events occurring. So an urban location for some nice senior living is actually very attractive for a developer because it's attractive to the residents. Part of the DRI plan would presumably move some of those elements in that, what I call the Dock Street triangle down there, out. Like, for instance, do we really need public utilities right down on the waterfront? The waterfront is not relevant for what they're trying to do, but it is very relevant for, say, a convention center. So there's things we can kind of move around, and this DRI gives us the opportunity to make these decisions that we couldn't have had otherwise.
That's been talked about for years, moving the sewage treatment plant. Is that still an option, moving that to a new location, possibly going in with the town of Plattsburgh on a new facility?
I think that's a fair question to ask. I know that in the next 10 years that sewage treatment plant can't be repositioned somewhere else unless we have that big wave of federal money like we had in the 1970s that built the plant in the first place. If we did co-locate it, and I'd love to have these discussions with the town on sewer and water, there's lots of shared reasons for us to discuss things. But if it can't be done immediately, there's still a lot of ideas that are coming out of this DRI process to make that plant no longer a liability, maybe even an asset. Green roofs, walls around it, better odor control and covers, etc. Noise abatement. There are ways to do that, and a lot of cities have actually done that.
The governor was here earlier this week, laying out his budget, laying out details of millions of dollars that he'd like to invest in whiteface and the Olympic facilities. For Plattsburgh, winning a grant, $38 million to start a second phase of expansion, the $55 million expansion project, right on track and finishing up in the next year or so. So this would create a cargo port, and what else there at the airport?
All those various warehouses can be reconfigured now for advanced manufacturing, presumably aviation or transportation related.
Aerospace type companies.
Norsk, Bombardier, Prevost, Novabus can use that as a hub to bring in and out supplies. It's anticipated that the bus run, the Greyhound bus run, would run right into that airport, so people can now get shuttles to move out. So I think that we can start thinking of our transportation network differently, and I think that the airport is going to be very strategic for that. Of course, you also see that we're completing that final phase to make it a true international airport, so we can offer international flights even more easily as well. So I think there's an incredible amount of potential. Now, most of the airport, the old Air Force Base, as you know, is in the town of Plattsburgh, but that's fine. You know, their success is also the city's success. If we can create a world-class airport, a world-class manufacturing site up at Norsk, et cetera, we still need world-class quality of life, and that's what the city can contribute to that equation.
The city put in a marina just a couple of years ago and is looking at moving ahead with expansion. You raised some questions about whether that was a smart move to do that during the campaign. Do you still think that? Do you think that the city ought to put the brakes on expanding the marina?
As you know, that we're already involved in litigation over it.
Yeah. A neighboring business, privately owned, not happy that the city put the marina in there and is encroaching on their business.
That's right. And I could understand any private concern wondering why a city is, first of all, competing in that private domain, then second of all, expanding. And my argument from an economist is, if really the entire market is growing, there's just so many more boats that we just need more facilities to cater to them. But what I think we can do a little bit better job in is doing it in a way that kind of coexists with the private sector as well. So there's maybe things that the private sector may want to do with their marina, and there's different things that we would like to accomplish with our marina. Maybe we can work hand in hand, both of us fulfilling the goal of increasing the level of vibrancy in our city.